You will record or shall I record?
No problem, sir. Let's start.
Shall I record?
Yes, sir. No problem. You can.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. Today's topic is spotters in neuroradiology. So before going to the different spotters, I would like to mention various sequences in the neuroradiology, that is in the MRI. So whatever the image we have given in the exam, first find out whether it's a T1 weighted sequence or a T2 weighted sequence or a flare sequence or a diffusion weighted imaging. So mostly you out of the out of those four sequences, you'll get one or two sequences, and sometimes they will give even apparent diffusion coefficient imaging sequences. Okay, so let's begin. Slide is not moving. Wait 1 minute. Yeah. So this is first is the T1 sequence. So basically remember, T1 sequence is basically the normal anatomy. That means in the cerebral cortex, there is an outer gray matter and the inner white matter. So the T2 sequence is the pathology. That is, outer gray matter appears white and the inner white matter appears gray. And next is the flare sequence. Flare and T2 almost resemble similar. Only thing is, in the flare sequence, that is fluid attenuated inversion recovery sequence, you get the fluid gets suppressed. And next is the diffusion weighted. So whenever there is a restriction, it appears bright, and ADC is quite opposite to the diffusion weighted imaging. So with this background, so this is the imaging of the brain. This is the axial section of the brain. If you see, the outer gray matter appears white and inner white matter appears outer gray matter appears white and inner white matter appears gray. And if you see, the CSF is white, so this is a T2 sequence. So, and if you see the abnormality here, so here in the cortex you don't find much of abnormality. If you come to the basal ganglia region, so this is the caudate nucleus, this is the globus pallidus, and this is the lentiform nucleus. So this is the putamen. So in the globus pallidus, you see the hyperintense lesion which is surrounded by the hypointense area. So this resembles the eye of a tiger. So whenever you see the hyperintense globus pallidus which is surrounded by the hypointense in the setting of a young male who is having memory deficits and dystonia, if you get this type of imaging, this is classic of Haller-Walden's-Patch disease. So this is very classic of Haller-Walden's-Patch disease. What happens is, this Haller-Walden's-Patch disease, previously they think it was an idiopathic cause. Now it is comes under pantothenate kinase associated neurodegeneration. There are a set of neurodegenerative diseases where the patient gets early onset of dementia, cognitive deficits, and dystonia. So this is the classic imaging. This is the globus pallidus region. You see the hyperintense, which is surrounded by the hypointense area. So this hyperintensity is because of the gliosis, and the hypointensity is because of the abnormal iron accumulation. So this is classic of Haller-Walden's-Patch disease. This is nothing but eye of tiger appearance. So you can see the image, this one. So this is the eye of tiger appearance. So the classic hyperintense lesion surrounded by hypointense area. I'm repeating 3 to 4 times because these are rare diseases. So I want the students to memorize and also appreciate the various pathological features. So this is the axial section of the brain, where in the basal ganglia region you see the hyperintense area surrounded by the hypointense area. This is classic of Haller-Walden's-Patch disease, nothing but pantothenate kinase associated neurodegenerative type of disease. And this hyperintensity is because of the gliosis, and the hypointensity is because of the abnormal iron accumulation. Next, if you see again, this is the axial T2 section of the brain. Here if you see, the entire CSF is white. Again, this is a T2 sequence. So whenever you see the CSF white, that is T2, that is classic of T2. So if you see the pons here, you are able to see the hyperintense stripes within the pons. So this is classic of multiple system atrophy. So this is hot cross Bunsen. So this is comparable to the hot cross Bunsen. So you see the cruciform hyperintensities in the pons. So this hot cross Bunsen is also seen in spinocerebellar ataxias and in some neurodegenerative diseases like variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease and progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy and in secondary Parkinsonism. But for the all practical purposes, remember Hotcross-Bunsen is classically seen in multiple system atrophy. So previously, the eye of tiger appearance, Hallervorden Spatz disease, Hotcross-Bunsen is seen in multiple system atrophy. Okay. So coming to the third image, again you see the CSF filled spaces, and all these CSF filled spaces are white. Again, this is T2 axial sections of the brain, the T2 sequences. So I want to emphasize all the basal ganglia. So you observe the basal ganglia structures. This is the caudate nucleus, which is there in the adjacent to the frontal horn. This is the caudate nucleus. As I already mentioned, this is the globus pallidus, and you see the adjacent to the globus pallidus is the putamen. So in the basal ganglia, caudate nucleus plus putamen is called striatum, and the globus pallidus plus putamen is called lentiform nucleus. So if you see the putaminal area, so if you see the putaminal area, on the right side there is no abnormality, on the left side you see the putaminal slit. So this putaminal slit sign is seen in Wilson's disease. Okay, this putaminal slit sign is seen in Wilson's disease. The sensitivity of this sign is almost 97%. Okay, so again, this putaminal slit sign is seen in Wilson's disease and multiple system atrophy. So previously in the multiple system atrophy we have seen Hotcross-Bunsen. Now again another sign in the multiple system atrophy, that is putaminal slit sign, and putaminal slit sign is also seen in Wilson's disease. Okay. Again, we will see one more radiological feature in Wilson's disease, which is more characteristic. Okay. So again, this is a very important image. You see the different sections of the brain and different sequences. So the different sections of the brain and different sequences. So the moment you see this, the most important thing is you are seeing some abnormal white areas. So the first one, so whenever you see the CSF filled space white and the outer gray matter appears white and the white matter appears gray, so this is basically the flare sequence. I already mentioned the flare sequence. The difference between the flare and T2 is the CSF gets suppressed in case of flare sequence. So here you are able to see the hyperintensities in the juxtacortical area and also the hyperintensities in the periventricular area. So whenever you see the hyperintensities in the periventricular area and in the juxtacortical area, you go through some more sequences. Again, you see some lesions in the infratemporal area and some classic periventricular lesions, which looks like Dawson's fingers, and also some incomplete C-shaped ring. So see, appreciate this image in the F. This is the incomplete C-shaped ring. So all these point towards a demyelinating lesion. So out of all these, what is classic in case of demyelinating diseases? That is incomplete C-shaped ring. That is the F image. The incomplete C-shaped ring is the classic of a demyelinating lesion, which is classically seen in case of multiple sclerosis. So these images are classical of multiple sclerosis. So if you know the multiple sclerosis, the imaging criteria is based on the McDonald's criteria. So you see lesions in various sites. So the classically you see in the juxtacortical area, periventricular area, infratemporal area, and in the spinal cord area. So in these sequences, you see the juxtacortical, and in the periventricular area, and in the Dawson's fingers you are able to see, and the black holes. These are all the black holes, and also the incomplete C-shaped ring. All these are characteristic of MS. So as I already mentioned, multiple sclerosis, the flare sequence. The first image is the flare sequence. So in the flare sequence, I already mentioned there is a periventricular and juxtacortical lesion. We have already seen the black hole sign in the T1 weighted image, and in the T2 you have seen the infratemporal lesion. You see the Dawson's fingers, and there is a homogeneous uptake of contrast, and there is an open ring sign. So I want you to remember, appreciate this periventricular white matter hyperintensities, that is demyelinating lesions. They are classic of multiple sclerosis, and other areas where you see the lesions in multiple sclerosis are the juxtacortical. So this is the cortical area. So this is the juxtacortical, and also the periventricular, and also the infratemporal. This is the cerebellum, and in the infratemporal compartment you are able to see the infratemporal lesions. And also this one again, whenever you see a target lesion, that is ring enhancing lesion, which is incomplete C-shaped. So if you see the ring, this is not complete here. So the incomplete C-shaped ring is classic of multiple sclerosis. Okay. So this is classic of demyelinating lesion. I hope you got the point. So at least those who are new to this neuroradiology, at least remember able to observe few points. So once you revise again, you're able to get it. So the multiple sclerosis, it's a demyelinating lesion. You see lesions in multiple places. As the name mentioned, you see the sclerosis, that is demyelination in multiple places. In the classic regions are the periventricular, juxtacortical, infratentorial, and in the spinal cord. What is classic are Dawson's fingers and also the incomplete open shaped ring enhancing lesions. Okay. Again, what is this lesion? I just give 5 to 10 seconds time. I think just focus on this image. This is a little bit difficult image. Okay. What you are seeing is the midbrain. Okay. What you are seeing is the midbrain. These are all the tegment. These are all the cerebral peduncles, and this is the tegmentum area. Okay. So what you are able to see here in the midbrain, there is an area called there are the dorsal region, you see the tegmentum, and in the ventral region you see the tectum, and also in the cerebral peduncles you see the substantia nigra. This is a classic image that is swallowtail sign. It has a diagnostic accuracy of more than 90% for Parkinson's disease. What you all know in the Parkinson's disease is there is a degeneration in the substantia nigra. That you know, there is a degeneration in the substantia nigra. The substantia nigra is classically located in the midbrain region. So how will you see in the image? So this is the tail. This is the swallowtail sign, which is normally seen. So this absence of this swallowtail sign. So the absent swallowtail sign is characteristic of Parkinson's disease. Again, I am mentioning this is the midbrain area. This is the tegmentum area. This is the cerebral peduncles. Here you are able to appreciate the tail. This is the swallowtail sign. Here you are not able to see this swallowtail sign. So this absent swallowtail sign is characteristic of Parkinson's disease. Okay. Next, what is this? Here you are able to. So whenever you see image, you have to see whether it's a T1, T2, or a flare or contrast. So the CSF is dark, so it's not T2, and you are able to appreciate the contrast here. So this is the T1 contrast. You are able to see the ring enhancing lesion, and there is some nodule. So this is characteristic of cerebral toxoplasmosis, eccentric target sign. The moment you see eccentric target sign, cerebral toxoplasmosis. So I want you to remember, in all the cases of cerebral toxoplasmosis, you don't see the eccentric target sign. But the moment you see the eccentric target sign, that is pathognomic of cerebral toxoplasmosis. So cerebral toxoplasmosis can be, means in cerebral toxoplasmosis, you can see the sign or you may not be the sign. But the moment if you see the sign, that is pathognomic. Eccentric target sign, that is an ring enhancing lesion with an eccentrically enhanced mural nodule. This is characteristic of cerebral toxoplasmosis. It is seen in less than 1/3. Okay. So in a immunocompromised patient who presented to you with altered sensorium and with some seizures or some focal deficit, the moment you see the ring enhancing lesion, so the ring enhancing lesion with this eccentric nodule, this mural nodule, this is pathognomic of cerebral toxoplasmosis. Okay. Cerebral toxoplasmosis, eccentric target sign. So what is this? This is again, all the CSF filled spaces are white, and you are able to appreciate, I hope you are able to appreciate some animal sign here. This is again very classic, very classic. This is face of giant panda. Nigam, are you able to hear?
Yes, sir, it is audible.
Okay, fine. So I'll just pause a moment. I mean, are you able to follow? If somebody is able to follow, or any doubts, they can ask.
No, sir.
So I had a doubt. Can I ask?
Yeah, sure. You can ask.
So can you once again repeat the difference between flare, T1 and T2? Actually, I'm new to neuroradiology, so I am getting confused with the basic terms.
Sure. I will answer. That is the main thing. Actually, if you don't know the T1, T2 and flare sequences, and one more diffusion weighted, again this whole lecture is like it's like Greek and Latin. So you see, again I'll go back to the first image. 1 minute. Okay, so this is basically so you see, whenever you see the neuroradiology images, the sections are either axial or sagittal, or you see the coronal sections. So this is basically the axial sections of the brain. So basically, you know that outer gray matter and inner white matter. I think at least you know that. Okay. So outer gray matter and inner white matter. So what is T1 is nothing but T1 depicts your normal anatomy. So the normal anatomy, there is outer gray matter and inner white matter. So even in the imaging, you see the outer gray matter appears hypointense and the inner white matter appears hyperintense. Okay. And T2 is basically abnormally, that is pathology. T2 sequence we do basically to identify the pathology. So the outer gray matter appears hyperintense and inner white matter appears hypointense. Okay. And next is the flare sequence. What is the flare sequence? Fluid attenuated inversion recovery. Again, in fluid attenuated inversion recovery, we are only suppressing the fluid. That's why the difference between T2 and flare, in flare sequence only you are suppressing the fluid. So the CSF will appear dark. When compared to the T2 and flare, the only difference is in T2, the CSF is white and in flare, CSF is dark. Next is the diffusion weighted. Diffusion weighted imaging. Another is there is an ADC, that is apparent diffusion coefficient. Again, the diffusion weighted imaging is nothing but we are able to see the diffusion restriction. That means the particles are getting restricted whenever you see an infarct. See, you get diffusion restriction when the cells are able to restrict the diffusion, that is diffusion of that particular waves. So you whenever if there is an abscess, in the center of the abscess there is a diffusion restriction. If you see a necrotic lesion, all the necrosis, there will be no diffusion restriction. In the periphery of that necrosis area, that is in the tumor, all the tumor cells will show diffusion restriction. And in the infarct, if you see any stroke patient, if in the diffusion weight imaging, if you particularly able to see in a particular vascular territory there is diffusion restriction, that means that particular area got infarcted. So there is a diffusion restriction. So basically in any neuroradiology sequence, you have to see T1, T2, diffusion weighted imaging, ADC, that is apparent diffusion coefficient, and flare sequences. And there are more sequences like fats. For the fat suppression, there are stage sequence which is not needed. Basically, you need to understand T1 sequence, T2 sequence, flare sequence, again T1 contrast, and you need to know the diffusion weighted imaging. Okay, are you able to understand now?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Just remember, T1 is normal anatomy. T1 is normal anatomy. Outer gray matter appears gray, inner white matter appears white. T2 is pathology. So outer gray matter appears white, inner white matter appears gray. And always remember, CSF is white in T2. T2 CSF is white. Okay. And in the flare sequences, the CSF gets suppressed. The moment you see the outer gray matter appears white and the white matter appears gray and the CSF is dark, that is flare sequence. So if you see in this image, all the CSF spaces are white. So the moment you see the CSF is white, that is T2. Okay. And this is the axial section, and all your outer gray matter appears white and inner white matter appears gray. So this is T2 flare sequence. And again, these are the basal ganglia structures. Again, in basal ganglia structures, again remember, you need to first know what are the normal structures in basal ganglia. There are caudate nucleus and there is lentiform nucleus. And in lentiform nucleus, again, there are two parts. One is globus pallidus, another one is putamen. Okay. So this medial structure, so the medial structure is the globus pallidus and the lateral one is the putamen. Okay. And this is the caudate nucleus. So again, there is an MCQ, caudate nucleus plus putamen, CP. Caudate nucleus and putamen together constitutes striatum. And the globus pallidus and putamen together constitutes lentiform nucleus. Okay. Globus pallidus and putamen together constitutes lentiform nucleus. There are so many disorders where if there is a severe hypoxia, this basal ganglia structures are first affected because they are more sensitive to the hypoxia. Again, I will show you some of the poisonings. Okay. And so whenever you see, grossly whenever you see, you have to see there is any gray matter, there is any cortical lesions, or there is any subcortical or juxtacortical lesions, or there is any if you see periventricular lesions or basal ganglia lesions, and these are the thalami. So basically the basal ganglia, the inner surrounding periventricular white matter and the cortical area, and in the infratemporal compartment there are any cerebellar signs. So in this way, if you approach anatomically, most of the times you will be able to get it. I hope you understand. Okay. Hello. Nigam, I'm audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah. So again, I'm repeating. Okay, this is eye of tiger appearance, classic of Hallerwood and Spatz disease. This is hot cross bun sign. MSA, this is putaminous slit sign. It is seen in MSA and also some patients of Wilson's disease. These are all these images are classic of multiple sclerosis. So the moment you hear Dawson's fingers and incomplete open ring enhancing lesion, okay, Dawson's fingers, juxtacortical periventricular infratentorial lesions, all favor towards multiple sclerosis. Okay, this absent swallowtail sign has the characteristic of Parkinson's. It has almost diagnostic accuracy of more than 90%. Okay, again this ring enhancing lesion with eccentric nodule. Again, this is classic of cerebral toxoplasmosis. Almost in any time you see, and whenever you approach a neuroradiology image, again in neurology, the most important thing is the history. So if you read any question, any lengthy question, having the history, some examination findings, and some classic neuroradiology findings, and some CSF findings, almost 90 to 95% you are able to diagnose. Even if you don't know even one of those, at least some classical clinical findings. If you know the classical radiology findings, sometimes you can able to collaborate and you can make the diagnosis in a very lengthy questions. Okay. I think we are near this one. Face of giant panda sign. So again, face of giant panda sign and face of miniature panda cup sign, that is double panda sign. This is seen in Wilson's disease. So the moment you see this various hypointensities, okay, in the midbrain region, as I already mentioned, this is the cerebral peduncle, this is the tegmental area, and this is the tectum, and this is the superior colliculus. So here this hypointense areas, okay, this hypointense areas represent the ears. These are both eyes, and this is the chin. So this eyes represent this high signal intensity is abnormality, and these are all the spared. So this eyes, ears, and chin, which resembles the panda. This is classic of Wilson's disease. So the face of giant panda, face of miniature panda, and panda cup sign, together called as double panda sign, it is seen in Wilson's disease. Okay, so we have seen one is putaminous slit sign, another one is face of giant panda sign in case of Wilson's disease, that is hepatolenticular degenerative disease. Okay, again this one on the left you see this is the CT images, and again these are the MRI images. This is the T1, T2, and this is the contrast. So here you are unable to appreciate the lesion, but if you see in the T2 there is a very significant edema. So whenever you see a lesion in the brain with very significant edema and multiple nodules which are conglomerated, again this is more in favor of tuberculosis. So the moment you see a hypointense lesion in the T1 and with significant edema in the T2, and on the contrast, if you are able to see multiple nodules or conglomerated lesions, they are more in favor of tuberculoma. So what is classic of tuberculoma is in the this target sign is classic, and the significant edema is there in the tuberculosis, and also there is conglomerated. So in the clinical question, if you see conglomerated lesions, okay, target sign, and the lesion is surrounded by very significant edema, this is more in favor of tuberculosis. So the CECT, the classic sign is target sign, and in the MRI, non-KC and caseating, there is hyperintensity on T2 and hypointensity on T1, as we already appreciated. Okay, and in the contrast enhanced imaging, we see the nodular or ring enhancing lesion. Usually the size is more. Whenever you see the size is lesser, again it is in favor of neurosticercosis. In the further slides, I will mention the difference between the neurosticercosis and tuberculoma. Whenever you see the ring enhancing lesions in an immunocompromised or even in the immunocompetent person, if there is a significant edema, this is more in case of tuberculoma. And if there is conglomerated lesions, and if the lesions are more than 2 centimeters, and if you see the midline shift, that is more in favor of tuberculoma. Okay. So this is a blend sign, which is so if you in the this is the CT image, you are able to appreciate the hyperdensity and also hypodensity in one image. This is the blend sign, which is classic of that is the hematoma expansion. Okay, blend sign, it has two parts, as I already mentioned. One is the hyperdense, and which is closely merges with the hypodense. This is expanding hematoma. Okay, blend sign. This is white cerebellar sign. You are able to appreciate the cerebellum intensity is differentiated from the rest of the brain. This is white cerebellum sign, classic of hypoxic injury, that is global hypoxic ischemic injury. Okay, there is a global hypodensity of the supratentorial brain with the relative hyperdensity of the infratentorial compartment. The moment you see the complete white, that is hyperdensity of the cerebellum in the infratentorial compartment, that is white cerebellum sign, which is seen in case of global hypoxic ischemic injury. Again, this is an important image in relation to the cognitive disorders. So these are
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, can you show the previous sign once again, please?
Yeah. White cerebellum sign. So this is the CT image. Are you able to appreciate the density difference between the infratentorial compartment and supratentorial compartment?
Yes, sir.
So this infratentorial ischemic injury. Are you able to appreciate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Next, this is coronal sections of the brain. This is a case of dementia. Okay. So again, these the moment you see these images, you are able to see the complete atrophied brain with widened sulcal spaces. All the sulcal spaces, this CSF filled spaces are dark. So and outer gray matter appears gray and white matter appears white. So this is a T1, and all these ventricles, the CSF filled spaces are widened, and also the sulcal spaces are widened. Okay. This is the temporal lobe. So if you're able to appreciate the temporal lobe, this is the medial temporal lobe, and the medial temporal lobe here, there is an atrophy of hippocampus. So if you appreciate the area here and the area here, you are able to see the more widened sulcal space. So the atrophy of medial temporal lobe, which is classic of Alzheimer's disease, this is nothing but elephant sign. Okay. So this is the duck. If you are able to see the duck, this is the duck sign. This is the normal brain, medial temporal lobe. And if you see the trunk of this elephant, so the trunk of this elephant, this is the trunk of this elephant. So the atrophy of the medial temporal lobe is depicted in the form of a trunk of an elephant. So this is called elephant sign, which represents the atrophy of medial aspect of temporal lobes and hippocampus in Alzheimer's disease. Again, I want to emphasize here, you don't see this in all Alzheimer's disease. Mostly in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's, that is all the atrophy has happened. There you can able to classically appreciate this elephant sign. So in Alzheimer's disease, okay. So the moment you see this brain, this is all the atrophied brain with the widened sulcal spaces and the widened ventricles and the grossly atrophied temporal lobes. There you can able to appreciate this classical elephant sign. Okay, it resembles the trunk of this elephant. Okay. Again, what is this image? Nigam, I think we have only 5-10 minutes.
We have approximately 8 minutes, sir.
8 minutes. Okay. So I will show more important ones which are useful. Again, this is a classic image. So you all have read Parkinson's disease. There are something called Parkinson's plus syndromes. That is corticobasal degeneration, progressive supranuclear palsy, and multiple system atrophy. This is classic of PSP. So this is the brainstem, this is the pons, and this is the midbrain. Okay, so midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. So you are able to see the narrowest midbrain. So basically there is an atrophy of midbrain. Normally there is a convexity will be there. So this is flattened. This is classic in case of progressive supranuclear palsy. This is called hummingbird sign and penguin sign. Again, these are commonly asked spotters even for the MD residents. So remember hummingbird sign, penguin sign. So this is the midbrain tegmentum. The bill is the midbrain tegmentum, which is atrophied, and this is the rostral midbrain. So you are able to appreciate the thin atrophied atrophied midbrain. So this is classic of progressive supranuclear palsy. Okay, what you have to appreciate is there is an atrophy of the midbrain with the relative preservation of the pons. So here the entire pons is preserved. So in the this section, this is the mid-sagittal MRI. There is an atrophy of midbrain tegmentum with relatively preserved pons. So this is seen in progressive supranuclear palsy. So in the question, if you see the hummingbird sign, penguin sign, and in the clinically there is dirty tie sign. These patients have there is a upward gaze palsy. So all the food will be fallen into their tie. So dirty tie sign clinically, and in radiologically hummingbird sign, and patients not responding to the levodopa clinically. So this is classical of progressive supranuclear palsy who have early falls. Okay, so I want you to go and read all the Parkinson plus syndromes. Again, those are very commonly asked. Multiple system atrophy, corticobasal degeneration, and progressive supranuclear palsy. I want to show again some more important things. Again, this is again commonly asked area. DD of basal ganglia hyperintensities in adult. So you see the basal ganglia are very sensitive to hypoxia. So there are so many disorders where you see the basal ganglia hyperintensities. So classic ones are the hypoxic ischemic injury, where there is a near drowning. I mean, in the near drowning and cardiac arrest, there you see hypoxic ischemic injury. You see the basal ganglia hyperintensities. And viral encephalitis. There are many viral illnesses, that is West Nile, HSV, Japanese encephalitis. You see the basal ganglia hyperintensities, osmotic demyelination syndrome, toxin exposure. Again, CO poisoning. There is globus pallidus involvement. Again, this basal ganglia hyperintensities, we have already seen the Wilson's disease. In the Wilson's disease, we have seen the putaminal slit sign and some giant panda sign. In CO poisoning, there is classically globus pallidus involvement. And in viral encephalitis, again, there is involvement of mammillary bodies in Japanese encephalitis. And in HSV and in West Nile, there are some basal ganglia involved. So some infections, in some ischemic injuries, and toxin exposure, and some metabolic disorders like Wilson's, and there is a pulvinar hyperintensities in case of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Again, in metabolic disease like hepatic and hypoglycemic encephalopathy, in all these disorders, there is basal ganglia hyperintensities. What I want to appreciate is you have to see the clinical scenario, and then you have to see the imaging and come to an appropriate diagnosis. So these are all the various differentials for basal ganglia hyperintensities. Very high yield area in MCQ point of view. Again, this is, so I will close with this last topic, leukodystrophies. I want in any exam in pediatrics or in neuroradiology and neurology, you will come across various leukodystrophies. So the classic ones are the Alexander's disease and Pelizaeus-Merzbacher disease and metachromatic leukodystrophy, adrenoleukodystrophy. You need to know the inheritance pattern. You need to know what are the areas of brain which are involved and some classic appearance. So the moment you see the tigroid skin or the leopard skin appearance, it is seen in case of metachromatic leukodystrophy. It is also seen in case of Pelizaeus-Merzbacher disease. So this tigroid appearance, you are able to see the tigroid appearance here. In this image, you are able to see this linear hyperintensities. This is tigroid appearance. This is linear hypointensities radiating from the ventricular margins within the periventricular white matter. This is seen in metachromatic leukodystrophy and Pelizaeus-Merzbacher disease. So in PJ type question, you can answer both. And if they give only one option, tigroid appearance, leopard skin appearance is seen in metachromatic leukodystrophy. Okay. Again, this is the recently asked question in names. So the multiple hyperdensities in the entire brain. This is starry sky pattern, which is classically seen in case of neurosteatocystosarcosis. So the moment you see the multiple hyperdensities in the entire brain, even if you see sometimes even in the scalp area and sometimes even in the muzzle area, in the chest area, you see this all hyperintensities are the dead neurosteatocystosarchy. So this starry sky pattern is classical of neurosteatocystosarcosis. Okay. These are the differences as I already mentioned. So briefly, I'm saying the moment you see the larger thing, that is big lesions, conglomerated lesions, more edema, midline shift, size is bigger, it is more in favor of tuberculoma. So roughly remember, larger lesions, conglomerated lesions, multiple lesions, midline shift, more edema, it is more in favor of tuberculoma. Smaller lesions, single lesions, smooth margin, less edema. So I can say more violent looking is tuberculoma, more simple looking is neurosteatocystosarcosis. They are smaller lesions, single, less edema, smooth margin. Mostly midline shift is not seen. It is more in favor of neurosteatocystosarcosis. Okay. This is Huntington sign, where Huntington sign, if you know, there is a caudate nucleus atrophy. As I already mentioned in the first image, this is the caudate nucleus. So this caudate nucleus atrophy is present in Huntington disease, where you see the boxcar ventricles. So this boxcar ventricle sign is classical in case of Huntington's disease. Okay. So this is the last thing. I will close with this image. So these are, as I already mentioned, there are various leukodystrophies which are specifically affecting. So if you see so all these lesions are the hypomyelinating lesions, that is leukodystrophies. So if the demyelination is more predominantly in the frontal region, this is classic of Alexander disease. It is more, if it is more in the parieto-occipital region, it is X-linked adrenoleukodystrophy. If it is in the subcortical area, the degeneration or the hypomyelination is more in the subcortical area, it is Kearns-Sayre syndrome. If it is diffuse, that is periventricular diffuse, it is metachromatic leukodystrophy. And in the periventricular area, if it is mild, it is juvenile. NCL is neuronal ceroid lipofuscinosis. And this is all this white matter are able to see. This is all vanishing white matter. This is vanishing white matter disease. And the cerebellum, if you are able to see here, the cerebellum is all hypomyelinating. This is cerebrotendinous xanthomatosis and duplication of laminin B1. This is classical in case of some in other leukodystrophies. So I want you to remember at least few points. Frontal area, more frontal area, if it is hypomyelinating.
If the session closes, you can join again with the given link. The link which was sent to you, you can join through that. If it is closed abruptly. Okay, sir, you can continue.
Yeah. And more predominantly in the frontal. Yeah. Okay, I think we have some time, so I'll go some little bit slow. So this is again a very important area. 1 minute. Predominantly frontal, this is Alexander's disease, and predominantly parieto-occipital, this is X-linked adrenoleukodystrophy. And if it is predominantly subcortical, so you are able to see in the subcortical region all the dystrophy. There is the hypomyelination. This is Kearns-Sayre syndrome. And if you are able to see the extensive hypomyelination in the periventricular area, again, the moment you see the periventricular area hypomyelination, if it is diffuse, it is metachromatic leukodystrophy. And at the same time, you notice this tigroid pattern in case of metachromatic leukodystrophy. And if it is mild, so if the demyelination is mild, this is juvenile neuronal ceroid lipofuscinosis. And this is entire white matter, looks like a vanishing white matter disease. This is vanishing white matter disease. So the entire inner white matter, it looks like a vanishing white matter disease. And in the cerebellum, it will predominantly, if you see the hypomyelination, it is classic of cerebral tendinosis xanthomatosis. Okay, so I will just revise the entire things once again. So some infections I didn't cover. Mostly so the aim of this lecture is basically first you need to know the basic.
After the panda sign, some part were missed, so you can continue after that panda sign.
Panda sign.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So giant panda sign already. Giant panda sign. This is Wilson's disease.
After that, some were missed.
Okay. So this is tuberculoma, as I already mentioned. If you see any conglomerated lesions with significant edema, and in the contrast, if it is, you see the nodules, and in the ring enhancing lesions, and also the variable intensities. So some hyper, some hypo. Okay, in the contrast image, these are all favor in lines of tuberculoma. In the clinical picture, you see some altered sensorium and some focal lesions. Okay, tuberculoma. And this is the blend sign. This is white cerebellar sign, which is secondary to the global ischemic injury, global hypoxic ischemic injury. This is, I already mentioned, medial temporal lobe atrophy, significant medial temporal lobe atrophy. There you see the classical elephant sign. Okay, all this hippocampal atrophy, which is seen in the advanced cases. This is again, you don't see in all cases of Alzheimer's disease, and even in the milder disease, this is seen only in case of advanced disease where there is complete atrophy of temporal lobes. This is again hummingbird sign, penguin sign, atrophy of midbrain tegmentum with relatively preserved pons. Again, this is classically seen in case of progressive supranuclear palsy. Okay, let's wind up, Nigam. If you have any doubts, somebody can have any doubts in last. I will add some more important neuroradiology spotters, and I will upload in this. I will give to Nigam. He will upload in the AIM for PG. Like just before the exam, you just go through the images. You no need to identify all the, what you say, you no need to understand everything. At least you need to know the basic things like what is T1, what is T2, what is flare, what is diffusion weighted imaging, and what are the classic patterns in various classical disorders. I want whenever you focus in the neurology, you read in lines of focus on the ischemic disorders, focus on the demyelinating disorders, and some infectious diseases, and some metabolic disorders, and some genetic diseases, and like leukodystrophies, and some other miscellaneous. Mostly, it will cover up most of the important things for the exam. If somebody can ask anything, they can ask. I think we have some time.
So can you mail us the PPT?
Yes, sure. I can mail you. You just.
So while mailing, can you please add a slide which talks about flare T1, T2?
Yeah.
That is not there in the PPT. So if that can be done.
Just send me your mail ID to.
You can mail to sir. The mail ID is given in the screen. You can mail to sir and sir will contact.
Whoever needs,
okay, sure.
This week I will add more. Maybe in next 5 to 10 days I will mail to you. Okay. I will add
okay,
at least
sir.
Total. I will collect some 50 to 60 images which are essential. Even in this presentation, some things are not needed at your level. So I will try to include all the commonly asked ones and which are important, and also some pathognomic signs, I mean telltale signs which will help you in the exam. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It was a really nice session, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your time and the session, sir.
Okay, Nigam, I will add some important signs. I will maybe in next 5 to 10 days. I will mail to you. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I will try to include more telltale signs and some of the important pathognomic signs of this some neurological disorders. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I will stop the recording, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
For next session, you can visit m4pg.com, then head on to LearnPad, then click on upcoming online class. Then on 2nd July we have class on Cell by Dr. Sesjan, and you can click on register for free, and the form will pop up and you can register. So that's all.